Good evening, everybody. My name is David Goodman. I'm the director of the China Studies Centre here at the University of Sydney, and I'm speaking to you, despite the picture behind me, from the Gadigal land of the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We recognise their traditional owners, past, present, and emerging, and their right to land, water, and air. Before I hand over to Louise Edwards, who, as usual, is going to chair this session of the mini-series on women in China, I just want to congratulate once again Minglu Chen for having put together a wonderful series. We've had 3 mini-series on this topic. I won't know what to do with my Monday evenings next week and the week after. So we look forward to hearing more about this. And we look forward today to hearing from Professor Edwards, who is the greatest chair the centre has, and she's going to introduce Dr. Chen. Over to you, Louise.
Okay, thank you very much, David. And it's a real pleasure to be here again. The last 2 weeks have been so stimulating with last week's talk from Dr. Jiang Qing from CUHK talking about housing and gendered access to housing, and the previous week from Dr. Jiang Qing, who unfortunately can't be with us today. She's been called away to an urgent meeting. But today we're very honoured to have Sydney University's own lecturer here, Dr. Minglu Chen, and she's a senior lecturer in the discipline of Government and International Relations and also director of the local China project at the University of Sydney China Studies Centre. Her research concentrates on women and social and political change in China and the interaction between entrepreneurs and the state, and particularly women entrepreneurs, which was the subject of her first book. She's also published on this topic of women's political participation in numerous venues, and most recently in the China Journal, prestigious journal coming out of Australian National University and published by Chicago University Press, as well as China Quarterly and the Journal of Contemporary China, another 3 sterling outlets that really stand as testament to the quality of Minglu's work. Today, she's going to speak on, as you can see on the screen, women, media, gender and politics, representation of female political leadership in the People's Daily. And what we need to pay attention to here is that the People's Daily is the official Communist Party newspaper. So what happens in that newspaper is really an excellent barometer of top-level attitudes, because everything that comes out in that paper is authorised by the central leadership. It's not an accidental, clickbait sort of newspaper. It matters what goes on in that newspaper. And we can't dismiss it just as mere propaganda, because when you do the work like Minglu has done and look at it over the longue durée, you can see that it's a really interesting barometer of change. And so this is what I think we're going to see today from Dr. Chen. So I guess what I'd really like to see is, just to prompt the conversation is, what role do women politicians play for the party how are they represented in the media? That we saw in the first seminar in the series from Xinhui, Dr. Jiang Qing, that women are really quite active in advocating for more formal political power at all levels of government, not just at the central level, but at all levels of government. And at each level, she showed us different strategies have to be applied from all of the women political aspirants. And then last Monday, we heard from Dr. Jiang Qing that women really still struggle for equal treatment in the key financial sector or arena of housing. And it's, a combination of family gender norms as well as administrative sexism. So women are still struggling across a number of spheres and at multiple levels of society to be regarded as deserving equals to their brothers or to men generally. So Minglu, tell us more, given the paucity at the top level of Chinese politics, the paucity of women in leadership roles, what role does Riming Rubal play? And from your analysis of this top level central leadership, do women get presented as just mere decorations Are they just flower pots, or do they have other discursive roles to play in the media? So take it away, Minglu. Really looking forward to hearing the results of your research.
Thank you so much, Louise, for a very, very generous introduction. I want to thank David and Ping from the China Science Center for giving us this opportunity to really enable me to bring together a small group of us who are working on the topic of women in China. So I think today what I will present to you is a continuation of what we have discussed over the past 3 weeks, which is where are the women, how do women fare in Chinese society and politics. So as Louise has introduced, this is a piece of work of mine that looks at media coverage of female politicians at the very top level in China. So these are not just any women and also not just any media outlet. This is the People's Daily, the Chinese Communist Party's mouthpiece, and also the female members who have ever been appointed into the very core of the Chinese Communist Party power center. So the CCP Central Committee Politburo since the establishment of the PRC in 1949. So I don't really have a huge data pool because ever in the Chinese Communist Party history, there have only been 6 women full Politburo members. So these are Jiang Qing, who was a Politburo member during the years of 1969 to 1976. Ye Qun from 1969 to 1971, Deng Yingchao from 1977 to 1985, Wu Yi from 2002 to 2007, Liu Yandong from 2007 to 2017, and Chunlan from 2012 to 2022. So I think obviously this is, if you look at the very top of the Chinese Communist Party, this is not really a cheerful picture for women. Right? So my research has been driven by the question of what does the Chinese Communist Party think about women's political leadership? So elsewhere, I've written about female political leaders. So I studied their biographical data. I try to make some kind of generalizations based on these women's experiences, personal profile. And I try to guess what the Chinese Communist Party was considering when they appoint female members into important positions in the Communist Party state leadership roles. So, but obviously all this had been assumptions, if I guess guessing, but informed guessing, right? Exactly what does the Chinese Communist Party think about female leaders? I think that's a question that I try to answer. That's the reason why I came up with this topic. We all know, and elsewhere I have argued, the Chinese Communist Party has been an old boys club. But then how was the old boys club's attitude towards women in important positions? So obviously it's impossible to find meeting minutes where the Chinese Communist Party top leaders talk about appointment of female, right? Whether Jiang Qing should be a full member of the Politburo or Jiang Qing should be an alternative member of the Politburo. These kind of things we will never probably find out. But I feel the People's Daily, because of its very unique nature, which I will introduce to you in a second, that would be a very good starting point. And also, I feel I always in my teaching, I tell students when you write a piece of research, right, you need to look at what has been done, what has been written about this topic or relevant topics, right? You try to find a gap, then you can justify your own research in this case, I feel I have been very lucky because the gap is so obvious. It is there. Right? Female political leaders in the Chinese system, I don't think has really received a lot of attention. Louise has written a few pieces on this topic. Then other than her at the very top level of the Chinese Communist Party state leadership, I don't think there are other people who have for a very long time produced work on this. When coming to the topic of media representation of women's political leadership in China, this really seems to have been a topic that has been neglected. But I guess largely because there just aren't so many women appointed to these important positions. But then again, even though my data has only got 6 women in it, there has been really quite a lot of news stories produced by the People's Daily, which would warranty, I think, a meaningful analysis. So this is what my starting point is. Sorry, my page just moved. So obviously there have been people who have written about media representation of women in general in the Chinese context. So I think like a lot of people have highlighted this, right? There has been a obvious, it seems like there has been a dichotomy of China before and China since the economic reform, right? It seems like media's representation of women in the before pre-reform era and the post-reform era has been quite different. And this scholarship argues the difference has been really the consequence of China's marketization. So in the pre-reform era under Mao Zedong, there has been this scholarship has highlighted a lot of gender sameness or desexualization of women appearing on media, and they attributed this to the socialist ideology of women's emancipation and empowerment, and also the gender erasure policy of the Maoist state. Then obviously in the post-reform era, a lot of people have highlighted there has been this kind of new trend of re-sexualizing, re-feminizing women as a result of China's marketization and the revival of China's traditional value. So what I am trying to hopefully towards the end of my presentation, I will make myself very clear that actually the media representation, if we look at the 6 ever female Politburo members and how they have been covered by the People's Daily, then this is not really a picture of a clear break or division of pre-reform and post-reform era. And really, I hope I will be able to explain how women politicians, particularly in this case, have been covered by the media, has been a kind of a changing dynamic. There has been gender stereotyping of these women, but how these gender stereotypes have been used have also fluctuated. So sometimes People's Daily would reinforce certain features of the gender stereotype. Sometimes it would downplay certain features of gender stereotype. The whole purpose is really to serve the different goals of the Chinese Communist Party at different stages. And I will try to explain this in my presentation. Just a little bit about the People's Daily. As Luis was saying, right, the People's Daily really occupies a very special or unique position in China's media landscape. So this is obviously the mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party itself. It is directly under the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee Publicity Department, or 中宣部. Over the history of the People's Daily, a lot of the articles actually has been closely overseen by the Chinese top leadership. A famous example was Mao Zedong. I think Mao Zedong at times, there have been stories of him editing articles published by the People's Daily. Sometimes he actually contributed important articles. So that's one thing. This is the official mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee. And another thing is, remember we were talking about how the current scholarship talking about how women have been represented by Chinese media, they all highlight this is something to do with China's commercialization, marketization. So the scholarship suggests that because medias nowadays in China, they are all under the pressure of generating their own profit. They are all subject to market competition. Sometimes they use this gendered language. They reinforce women's feminine aspects in their coverage just to attract the market, in order to have more audience, more subscription, and therefore make more money. But if this really has been the case, then the People's Daily is a very special existence because it's sheltered from this pressure of market competition, right? The People's Daily, on the one hand, it has compulsory subscription among every institution, department of the party state system. So to have an audience has never really been a problem for the People's Daily. On the other hand, facing this increasing market competition, the People's Daily's coping strategy had been to develop itself into a group where there are more commercial news outlets, and the website of the People's Daily also would tolerate articles written in more colorful language, but this leaves the People's Daily newspaper still maintaining its special function, which is to faithfully represent the opinions of the very top, the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee. So I feel this, together all these features combined, means that the People's Daily really offers us a very unique opportunity where we can separate the market influence from the state's perspective. Now we can analyze the coverage of female Politburo by the People's Daily to really figure out what the party center thinks or understands of women's political leadership. Sorry, it moved again. I will move on. So I group my, something has been a bit weird because this does not seem to be the most accurate slide I have. But anyways, so I have got 6 samples: Jiang Qing, Ye Qun, Deng Yingchao, Wu Yi, and Liu Yandong and Chunlan. So I grouped these 6 women into 3 groups. So I'm trying to argue, right? Often Jiang Qing and Ye Qun had been presented by the People's Daily as the bad women, but not all the time, and I'll explain how and why. So now I'm not very confident with the slides that I have put here, but yes, here we go. It's still the accurate page. So there, actually, if we compare Jiang Qing and Ye Qun, there are quite a few shared commonalities between these women, right? First, Jiang Qing and Ye Qun both joined the Chinese Communist Party fairly early on. I think Jiang Qing joined the Communist Party in 1933, and Ye Qun joined the party in 1937 or so. So they both had been very powerful political leaders during the Cultural Revolution. Jiang Qing was the director of the the first ranking deputy director of the Chinese Communist Party Cultural Revolution Group. And Ye Qun occupied a very significant role in the military, being the deputy director of the Cultural Revolution Group of the People's Liberation Army. Right. And obviously, for those of you who know about these two names, you would realize these two women's names are often associated with the names of two very, very powerful men. Jiang Qing was married to Mao Zedong, and Ye Qun was married to Lin Biao. One was a very top leader. The other one, for quite a while, was the number two of the Chinese Communist Party. Then another thing these women shared was how their political career ended. Both kind of ended in a quite dramatic way. Jiang Qing was arrested in 1976 after Mao died as the leader of the Lin Biao and Jiang Qing counter-revolutionary group. And Ye Qun, according to the official narrative, I don't think we actually know exactly what had happened. According to the official narrative, Ye Qun died in 1971 in a plane crash when she and Lin Biao tried to escape the country after an unsuccessful assassination attempt made on Mao Zedong. So the plane crashed over the territory of Mongolia. So that's how these two women's political career came to an end. So what had been the language used by the People's Daily to describe these women? Obviously, quite negative language, right? A lot of sex, gender stereotypes, a lot of misogyny and sexism, right? So these are just some random pictures. There had been a lot of language used as this. There had been reports of Ye Qun when she was trying to escape with Lin Biao. She did not forget to put on her high heel shoes. And after the plane crashed, at the crash site, people find one of her stilettos still remaining. Then that's one thing. The People's Daily in an article kind of reported Jiang Qing making a very bold statement, a very assertive statement. She said, "This old mama is not afraid of anything," or in Chinese is 老娘什么都不怕. Then Jiang Qing was described at some stage as the white-bone demon, which is a famous character in the famous story, The Journey to the West, right? This evil character, this ghost, female ghost, who was trying to seduce Tang Seng to kill him. So this kind of language, obviously, these women, their identity as someone's wife had been kind of highlighted by the People's Daily as well, right? But the word used here in the case of Ye Qun, that the word wife, the Chinese version was 老婆, which is actually a very colloquial, less so respectful term for the word of wife, not as the more formal term that's often used to describe wives of senior leaders, which is 夫人. So there had been some interesting things my analysis had highlighted. So when did these two women appear as someone's wife? definitely not during their the very height of their political career, when they were both full members of the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee Politburo. They appeared in many news stories, but never even once did either of these women appear as either Mao's wife or Lin Biao's wife. Jiang Qing only had been reported as the wife before she actually rose to the top position, before she entered the Politburo, right? She appeared in a handful of articles before her career started in the Politburo as the wife of Chairman Mao, but mainly to serve the diplomatic function of China's First Lady. She accompanied Chairman Mao to receive foreign delegations. That's often how the story would go. But obviously, after Jiang Qing entered the Politburo, she still would be there receiving foreign delegations, but then it seems like her increase of power has led to an obvious downplay of her gender roles in the report of the People's Daily of her. So here is an example. This is an article published by the People's Daily in 1974. Sorry, that's a different one, right? I forgot to put it here, but there was a story published by the People's Daily in 1968 after Jiang Qing rose to the Politburo, of how she was one of the Chinese Communist Party top leaders to be receiving a visiting foreign delegation, but she was not presented as Mao's wife. Chairman Mao appeared as Chairman Mao. He received the foreign delegation in the company of his closest comrade, his comrade in arms, Lin Biao. That's the language used. Also present at this occasion was Comrade Jiang Qing and a few other top leaders. So that is one thing the research has highlighted. Then when was Ye Qun referred to as someone's wife or Lin Biao's wife, to be more precisely? That's really after the incident of the plane crash. After her and Lin Biao's downfall, there had been a lot of reports on this. And in all these news stories, Ye Qun appeared together with Lin Biao as Lin Biao's kind of partner in crime, right? Here is the example for you here. Lin Biao and Ye Qun sent their son Lin Liguo to convene key members of their counter-revolutionary special dispatch, the United Fleet, and drew up the plan of a counter-revolutionary military coup. Lin Biao and Ye Qun did this, Lin Biao and Ye Qun did that, Lin Biao and Ye Qun and their son Lin Liguo fled in the plane in panic, right? But after Jiang Qing's downfall, the People's Daily kind of reflected on Jiang Qing's involvement in the Cultural Revolution, and the language that was used was very interesting. You could see there's this very clear line of separation that separates Jiang Qing from her husband Mao Zedong. Right, here is an example. In the end of 1974, under Chairman Mao's direct guidance and leadership, the CCP Center planned its fourth Congress, seeing it as a great opportunity to seize power leadership. The gun of the four did this and that. Then the great leader, Chairman Mao, was so perspicacious that he refuted the plot of Jiang Qing and her gang, and he straightforwardly pointed out that Jiang Qing has a wild ambition, so on and so forth. So this kind of language, if you did not know that Jiang Qing and Mao Zedong were married, you wouldn't even be able to tell that these are a couple, husband and wife. So there has been a very clear and obvious effort after Jiang Qing's downfall to separate her from her husband, Mao Zedong, right? I think the idea is very clear. Mao's reputation cannot be tarnished, which is later on really the official line of the Chinese Communist Party. In Deng Xiaoping's very important speech that reflected the party history that he gave after the Cultural Revolution. He mentioned this. The official line was, although the Cultural Revolution was started wrongly by Mao Zedong, right? It was really kind of it became an opportunity for Jiang Qing and her group to try to seize power and to direct the Chinese political social life in a different direction. Whereas in the case of Ye Jun, because her downfall was also Lin Biao's downfall, there hadn't been this need to really separate these two persons from each other. So everywhere that Ye Jun appeared in the reports of the according to the official narrative, the unsuccessful assassination, the two names appeared together, right? So Ye Jun had an important part, according to this narrative, to play in the assassination of Mao Zedong, and she was at least partially responsible for what had gone wrong in here at this time. So that was the coverage of the two bad women, and here are the example of the two good women. Obviously, Deng Yingchao and Wu Yi had been very accomplished politicians in their own rights. Deng Yingchao played a very important role in China's feminist movement, and Wu Yi, we know her for many, many things that she was so capable and competent to achieve. It was under her that China negotiated the entry to the World Trade Organization, and also during China's SARS outbreak, a very kind of over the time of the crisis, she was appointed as acting Minister of Public Health. So she really made a big effort and successfully contained the outbreak of this pandemic. But the coverage of these two women still seem to examine them through a gender lens, right? So Deng Yingchao and Wu Yi, in different ways, they have been praised for being compliant with gender norms here. So you can see the example, Deng Yingchao was had this very much emphasized gender role in the People's Daily, and Wu Yi, somehow her coverage reveals that she is a good example of a woman involved in this men's game, and she played it very well because she demonstrated aspects of masculinity, which was seen as the desirable feature for a politician in this public domain. So my research finds, right, Deng Yingchao, she kind of was often referred to at a certain stage of her career as the big sister by the People's Daily, the Dajie. I think this kind of Deng Dajie nickname came from her early years when she was a leader in the Chinese Communist Party Women's Federation. So her involvement in the Women's Federation kind of gained her the reputation of she was the big sister of her communist fellow sisters, right? All these women respected her and they addressed her as the elder sister or big sister. this is a title that indicated her seniority, her experiences, the respect she had enjoyed in the Women's Federation. But when did the People's Daily refer to Deng Yingchao as the big sister or the 大姐? It was very interesting. Very few of these articles were actually about Deng Yingchao's role in the Women's Federation or Deng Yingchao's role in the Chinese women's movement. It was really much later on. This is an example which challenges if there had been some patterns established in the coverage of Jiang Qing and Ye Qun by the People's Daily. When this women's political power increased, the use of gendered or sexist language decreased. But in the case of Deng Yingchao, that hasn't been the case. Deng Yingchao rose to the Politburo in 1978, and this is when the People's Daily started to address her as the Deng 大姐 or the 大姐, right? So for two important purposes, right? One type of articles kind of talk to Deng Yingchao as the big sister, but this kind of articles also reported her as the wife of Chunlan, this very virtuous male leader, right? So she was somehow treated as the legacy of all the good qualities that Chunlan had, as one type of the coverage of Deng Yingchao as the big sister. Another type of coverage of her as the big sister is often when Deng Yingchao received foreign visitors from other countries or delegations from Taiwan, right? So she actually played a very important role in the Chinese Communist Party's United Front work, but often what she did by kind of the official newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party focusing on presenting her as a caring, gentle, loving female figure. Her role as an extension of her role in the United Front work as an extension of her role in the family, that really trivialized her contributions and the work she did. Then in the case of Wu Yi, that's also quite interesting. Right? There have been quite a few articles by the People's Daily that presented Wu Yi as the female politician. So when she was reported in the 1980s, when she was working in the Sino-Pac company, she was reported as Wu Yi, a female expert with many years of experiences in the petrochemical industry. Then she rose to another important or more important position as the deputy mayor of Beijing. Then the People's Daily reported on her as Wu Yi, the female deputy mayor in charge of industry. Then she rose again to become the Minister of Foreign Trade. Then she was reported as the foreign minister. The People's Daily somehow felt the need to always point it out with gender in the coverage. And this ended, interestingly, in 1998, the last time we appeared as a female politician in the story of People's Daily report, it was in 1997. And this is an article about what China has done after it hosted the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women. So this is something that Xin Hui, 2 weeks ago, she mentioned, right, in her discussion of how gender quota, limited gender quota was adopted. She did actually mention this important event in the political life of Chinese women and world women, the United Nations Fourth World Conference. So this last article, when we appeared in the People's Daily as a female figure, this is an article that reported on women's Chinese women's political status, and we again was thrown out as a female leader with years of grassroots experiences, technological professionalism, so on and so forth, as a poster girl that demonstrate the Chinese Communist Party uses to demonstrate to the outside world of Chinese women's improved political status. So then fast forward, we have the two last cases of women being appointed to the Politburo. These were Liu Yandong and Sun Chunlan. Both of them served 10 years of tenure in Politburo. Then they retired. Liu Yandong was in the Politburo from 2007 to 2017, and Sun Chunlan from 2012 to 2022. And the interesting thing is, in the coverage of People's Daily of these two female Politburo members' activities, there had been, the newspaper had only used this very gender-neutral language. So this is if Liu Yandong and Sun Chunlan would ever appear in the People's Daily news reports, this is the language that had been used, right? Liu Yandong, a member of the CCP Central Committee Politburo and State Councilor. The People's, the party leaders also present at the meeting. That was a report of some sort of meeting, which I don't quite remember what it was, including Ma Kai, Wang Huning, Liu Yandong, Wang Yang, Li Zhanshu, Jiang Qing, and Lin Jihua. So you would never be able to tell if you didn't know these women, what they were doing in their background, right? You wouldn't be able to tell that these were two of the very few female leaders that this system had ever seen, right? The report of Sun Chunlan had a similar tone. Sun Chunlan, a member of the CCP Central Committee Politburo and the director of the CCP Central Committee United Front Work Department. So if they appeared with other male political leaders, these women kind of appeared by the ranking, right? The news reports would present them together with the rest of the group, right? They appear according to their seniority in the order of the presence. So am I going?
Yeah, Liu, I'm going to interrupt you and just say it's 1/4 to the end, and we want to at least provide the chance for discussion and a few questions. Do you want to skip to your conclusions quickly?
Right. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to the time. So what I'm trying to argue here is this gendered, or the kind of the language that the People's Daily had used to report on these female political leaders, right? Whether there had been gender stereotypes adopted or downplayed, that's really caused by the varying needs of the political party at different times, right? So Jiang Qing and Ye Qun, they were reported in this very misogynistic, sexist language because the Chinese Communist Party had to deal with the legitimacy crisis, and of the Cultural Revolution, and also the number 2 trying to assassinate number 1. These were important events, and also really odd incidents that the Chinese Communist Party had to make sense to the outside world. And it seems like these women had been the scapegoats of the party. Then when the needs arise, when the Chinese Communist Party had to present a positive image to the outside world to demonstrate itself as a very friendly figure in the world politics, then Deng Yingchao was presented as this caring, loving big sister. Then also when the Chinese Communist Party held this very important event of the United Nations World Women's Conference, then we was presented as the poster girl of the Chinese Communist Party's progressiveness. Then also the downplay of the gender identity of Liu Yandong and Chunlan really highlights, enabled the Chinese Communist Party to highlight its very core, the top leader, Xi Jinping himself, because I didn't get to say, right, at the same time when Liu Yandong and Chunlan were not really presented as female leaders with these special features. We also knew very little about other male leaders in the system. The only person we know quite a lot about is Xi Jinping himself. So the downplay of this women's gender identity really highlights the top leader and his position in the system.